بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم ما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we are in the days of Dhul Hijjah. As we have mentioned before, these are the most beloved days to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Him to be worshipped on. So whatever amount of worship, extra worship that we can do, that is praiseworthy. There's nothing specifically mentioned other than on the day of Arafah, which is the 9th, which should be around Tuesday, inshallah. We should fast on that day. There's a report in Sahih Muslim where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says that if someone fasts on the day of Arafah, the previous year's sins and the year to come, those sins will be forgiven. So we don't want to miss that opportunity. As for the rest of the days until leading up to that moment, we can do fasting, we can perform extra salah, give something in sadaqah on a daily basis, whatever amounts we're comfortable with, inshallah. And whatever good we can do, even husnul khuluq or good character, is something of great value on those days, on these days, I should say. Now, as I promised last week, inshallah, today's khutbah will be more along lines of the udhiyyah or the qurbani and rulings, virtues, etc. So we're going to talk about that, inshallah. Now, for those who go to Hajj, they have many different actions that they have to complete. Among them is slaughter as well. They have to slaughter the animal on the day of Eid. Now, those who don't go for Hajj, they also have certain responsibilities. One is to observe the virtues of these days. That's a responsibility. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is applying certain virtues to a certain time period, that doesn't mean that it's, we shouldn't think of it as optional. We should think of this as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to worship more, so it's a duty. Whatever amount that we can handle, it's a responsibility that we try to do as much as we can. Now, another responsibility on the day of Eid, of course, is the Salatul Eid. For us who are at home, we need to perform Salatul Eid. And that is an extra salah. And it's not, if it falls on a Friday, it doesn't cover Jumu'ah. It's a salah in itself, has its own time period, and it's different. So that is one responsibility. And another responsibility is Udhiyyah, or what is known in our vernacular and the way we speak, we say qurbani. Now, qurbani, the word qurban is used in the Quran as well to mean a sacrificial animal. But the correct term for this in Arabic is udhiyyah. Udhiyyah. So the Sahaba, they wouldn't say, I need to do qurbani on Eid. They would say, I need to do udhiyyah. Right? So this is just a term. It's fine if you want to call it qurbani, you want to call it sacrificial animal, whatever term you want to use for it, it's the action that counts. So we're going to talk about that responsibility, inshallah. First, let's discuss some of the virtues of this. Aisha radiallahu anha, in a hadith that is recorded by Imam al-Tirmidhi, she states that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Ma amila adamiyun min amalin yawm an-nahar ahabbu ila Allah min ihraq ad-dam." There's no action which is more beloved to Allah on Yawm an-Nahar. Yawm an-Nahar is the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. And in reality, we'll talk about that inshallah later on. There's a few days in which we can slaughter. It's not limited to the 10th only. There's more days that we can slaughter in. Preferably the 10th, which is the day of Eid itself. So in this hadith, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, on that day, on the day of Eid, the greatest action that a person can do, most beloved to Allah on that day, is to spill blood, he says. Ihraqud dam, cause blood to flow. Now this is obviously not literal. It means to slaughter an animal. Literal in the sense of an animal, but metaphorical in other senses, right? So to slaughter an animal, that is the most valuable thing to Allah on that day. So on the day of Eid, if you want to please Allah the most, you should engage in slaughtering an animal. إِنَّهَا لَتَأْتِي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ بِقُرُونِهَا وَأَشْعَارِهَا وَأَظْلَافِهَا. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that animal that you slaughter, the one that you will slaughter inshallah, it will return on Yawm al-Qiyamah with its horns, with the fur and the hair and the hoofs. All of that animal will be revived by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, resurrected. It will come back in its original shape. وأن الدم لا يقع من الله بمكان قبل أن يقع من الأرض. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, so what was the purpose of him saying that the animal is going to be resurrected? We'll see that in another hadith. Essentially, that animal, the entirety of that animal, every single hair of that animal is going to be put on your scale of good deeds. We want our scale of good deeds to be heavy. You don't want a light scale. You want to have a very heavy scale of good deeds that outweighs your sin. So the heavier your animal is, the heavier your scale will be. So if I slaughter a chicken, you can't even slaughter a chicken. It's not allowed. We'll talk about which animals you can slaughter. But that's a very light animal. If I slaughter a sheep, it's way heavier than a chicken. And if I slaughter a cow, that's really heavy. An ox, a camel, those are sometimes can reach almost a ton. So I'm putting a ton on my scale of good deeds. So this is what Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying. The hair of the animals, the hooves, the horns, all of that weight is going to be on your scales. This is the reward of slaughtering on Yawmun Nahr, that day. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam also says, when you slaughter the animal before the blood of the animal reaches the floor, it has already been accepted by Allah. Allah receives the animal before the blood has already fallen onto the floor, which means Allah readily accepts it. This is an ibadah, inshallah, not very difficult. I mean, it is difficult for those of us who find slaughter difficult, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will readily accept it. As for our salah, you need concentration, you need tawajjuh, you need khushu', khudu'. Sadaqah, you need to have a pure niyyah. When it comes to slaughter, inshallah, we have the niyyah to please Allah. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it on that day. So it's a very easy ibadah and very heavily it weighs on the scales. In the end of the hadith, he says, فَطِيبُ بِهَا نَفْسَ. Ensure that you get that rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be fortunate to engage in this act of ibadah. So we should not look at it as a burden. Sometimes we look at it, oh, I don't want to do qurbani, I don't want to do udhiyyah, it's such a big burden. Rather, we should look at it that this thing is going to be extremely heavy on my scales. So this is a ni'mah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In another hadith recorded by Imam al-Bukhari, narrated by al-Bara ibn Azib radiyallahu anhu, he states that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man dhabaha ba'da as-salah faqad tamma nusukuhu wa asaba sunnat al-muslimin." If someone on the day of Eid, after the Salatul Eid, they slaughter the animal, they have completed the rites of Dhul Hijjah. They have completed the rites of Eid, and they have followed the sunnah of the Muslims. This is the way of the Muslims. You come on Salatul Eid, and you perform Salatul Eid. Thereafter, you go and you slaughter the animal. That is the sunnah of Muslimin. And of course, the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In another narration, Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma says, أقام النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بالمدينة 10 سنين يضحي. For 10 years, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was in Medina. Every single year, he would do qurbani, he would do udhiyyah, he would slaughter. So this is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam as well, to do the udhiyyah, to slaughter the animal. This is a fortunate thing for us that we can follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We should be eager to do this. We should want to emulate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the best of our capabilities. This is a chance to do that. Now, in some narrations, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also mentions the reward, as I have mentioned and I alluded to previously. Imam al-Hakim, he quotes Fatima radiyallahu anha was said, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to Fatima radiyallahu anha, قومي إلى أضحيتك فاشهديها فإنه يغفر لك عند أول قطرة من دمها يغفر لك كل ذنب عملتيه. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says to Fatima radiyallahu anha, make sure you're present for your udhiyyah. She wasn't slaughtering, but he was saying someone was slaughtering on her behalf. Make sure you watch it. Why should you watch it, O Fatima? Because for every drop of blood that comes from this animal, you will be forgiven. Every single sin that you commit, or you have committed in the past, for every drop of blood that comes out from this animal, you will be forgiven. So this is a huge ni'mah. There's a lot of blood in these animals, and of course, the larger the animal, the more blood. And every drop that comes out of that animal is one sin that is forgiven from us. In another narration recorded by Imam Ahmad and Imam Ibn Majah, Zayd bin Arqam says that the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they said, Ya Rasulullah, ma hadhihi al-adahi. O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is the udhiyah? What is the qurbani? What is the sacrificial slaughter that we have to do? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded, Sunnatu abikum Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. This is the sunnah of your father Ibrahim alayhi salam. Not only is it the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the sunnah of Ibrahim. And we know the whole story of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had commanded him in a dream, he saw himself slaughtering his son Ismail alayhi salam. And so he went forward to fulfill the dream. Ismail alayhi salam also agreed with it. The mother also agreed with it. They were all in agreement, and he was prepared to slaughter his son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he saw this jazam, this desire to fulfill the command of Allah, he replaced Ismail alayhi salam with an animal, a ram from Jannah. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam slaughtered that ram. So from that time, this tradition has been coming down from Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. So the Sahaba, they asked Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what is it? Why do we have to do it? He says, this is the sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. It's also the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every single year he was in Medina, 10 years he was in Medina, he would slaughter. So then the Sahaba asked, فَمَا لَنَا فِيهَا يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. What do we get out of it? So this was the desire of the Sahaba. They always wanted to know, what is the reward for doing such and such action? You know, the Sahaba, among them were scholars, among them were great generals, among them were different kinds of people. One thing they all had in common is they were so eager in how to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the reward for it? They asked, O Rasulullah. So he said, بِكُلِّ شَعْرَةٍ حَسَنَةٍ. For every single hair of that animal. If you were to try to count the hairs on the animal, it doesn't even matter if it's a small animal, a small sheep, it would take you a very, very long time to count the hairs on that animal. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, for every hair on the animal that you will slaughter, you will get a hasana, a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the previous hadith we saw that every drop of blood is forgiveness of a sin, and every hair on the animal is in addition into your account, a good deed. And so then the Sahaba, they were a little bit incredulous. Subhanallah, how is this possible? Fasuf ya Rasulullah. What about the suf, the wool on a sheep? There's so much, you can't even count them. They kind of couldn't believe it. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, بِكُلِّ شَعْرَةٍ مِنَ السُّوفِ حَسَنَةٍ. Every single aspect of the fur or the wool of a sheep, every individual hair, you get a hasana, you get a good deed. So this is a huge ni'mah from Allah, an action that doesn't take much effort. It's just a little bit, of a learning curve, inshallah. We should all understand how to slaughter. And the reward is immense. Forgiveness of sin, as well as good deeds, as well as that animal being placed on the pan of your scale, being extremely weighty on Yawm al-Qiyamah. We want as many as possible. Imagine that individual who slaughtered camels every single year, and he decided, I'm going to slaughter the entire camel just for myself. We'll talk about, can you do shared portions and things like that. But imagine if a person slaughters an entire cow or a camel, which is called a badana, a large animal, every single year. That's tons on his scale on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And some of us, we're content with the smallest sheep that we can find. So we'll have that, inshallah. They're still weighty, but nothing like a camel, nothing like a huge ox. So this is a targheeb, and this is motivation for us to do more and not be satisfied with the least amount. Unfortunately, we're very satisfied. Let me find a country where animals are the cheapest possible. I can purchase a share for less than $100. I'll send my money to a wakil over there. He'll handle it. In America, I have to pay $500-$600 just for one share. That shouldn't be our attitude. Our attitude should be, for every single dollar, every single hair, every single pound, every single drop of blood is valuable, and it's for my own sake. So we need to change our attitude a little bit. Now, that was regarding some of the virtues of Udhiyyah. You get a lot of reward, a lot of forgiveness. You are following the sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam. How often do you get to follow a sunnah of Ibrahim alayhi salam? And you get to follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is something we should all want to do, inshallah. Now coming to the masail. Now the level of Udhiyyah, how is it considered in the madhahib? So according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, as well as Imam Malik, in one opinion of Imam Malik, the udhiyah is wajib upon certain people. We'll talk about who is it wajib upon. But opinion of most of the people here, I believe, are following Imam Abu Hanifa. Some may follow Imam Malik. Those two scholars, one opinion of Imam Malik and the famous school of Abu Hanifa is that it is wajib, meaning compulsory. Wajib is a little less than fard, but still compulsory for you to do udhiyah. As for the majority of the other scholars, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, Imam al-Shafi'i, and the other mujtahideen, they say it is a sunnah. Imam Tahawi rahimahullah, he says it's a sunnah that you cannot miss out on. So it's a little higher than a normal sunnah. When we think sunnah, unfortunately, what comes to mind is, I don't have to do it. This is not the case. Sunnah that you have to do. Okay, so some of the proofs for this, an uncle came to me last week and he was saying he wanted some proofs regarding the different masail. I don't see the uncle here today, but still, inshallah, everyone else can benefit. Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu is reported to have stated that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man wajada sa'atan falam yudahi fala yaqribanna musallana." The person who has the capability to do udhiyah and slaughter and still doesn't, he should not show up in the musalla on Eid. I don't want to see him. This is a warning, right? So if this was just an optional thing, why would Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam warn us such? A warning is meant for something that you have to do. So he says, if you have the capability, we'll talk about what is capability, and you still don't slaughter on the day of Eid, then don't show up for the Salat of Eid. Now, does that mean that you don't show up for Salat al-Eid? No. Come for Salat al-Eid, but this is a warning. This is showing you how important it is. In another narration, narrated by Mikhnaf bin Sulaym, he states that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ala ahli kulli baytin udhiyah." Upon every member of a family is udhiyah. They have to do the sacrifice, right? Udhiyah. So we'll talk about these conditions inshallah. And the Hanafi jurists, they also state, they take a proof from a ayah that we all know, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, Surah Al-Kawthar, إِنَّا أَعْطَيْنَاكَ الْكَوْثَرَ, indeed we have given you a lot of goodness, فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, so perform salah for your Lord and slaughter. Inhar means to sacrifice. Now, does this literally mean the slaughter of Eid? Some scholars have taken it to mean that. Other scholars have taken it to mean something else, another kind of sacrifice. But the Hanafi jurists say this is in regards to Eid, slaughtering on Eid. So it's the ayah in the Quran referring to it. You must slaughter. So that is why many scholars state that it's a compulsory act. You have to do it if the following applies to you. So now let's talk about who must do the udhiyah, who must do the qurbani. It's not for every single person, but many of us do fall in these categories. So there's 6 categories or 6 conditions that I have here, and you'll see that almost all of us fall into these categories. Number 1, the person must be sane. So if a person is insane, they're not in the correct state of mind, meaning they're unaware of their surroundings, they're completely out of it, then they do not have to do udhiyah. They don't have to perform salah. They cannot perform salah. Number 2, the individual must be free. Of course, everyone in today's time is free. That's not a condition that we have to worry about. Number 3, they have to be an adult. So children who have a lot of wealth, they don't have to do udhiyah. And you don't have to do it for them either. So if you have a child and you've set up, a bank account and things for your child, and they have thousands upon thousands of dollars there, they have not reached bulugh. In Islam, adult means they've reached bulugh, meaning that can differ. But if they're 15, they're definitely baligh, meaning they've reached puberty. So a child that has not reached puberty, if they have a lot of wealth, they don't have to do the udhiyah, nor do you have to do it on their behalf. Number 4, person must be Muslim. Obviously, if a person's not a Muslim, they don't even care about it. Number 5, they have to be a resident. This is a condition many people are, they're not thinking about. So if you are traveling on the days of Eid, and we'll talk about how many days there are, essentially the 10th, 11th, and 12th of Dhul Hijjah. Right? Those are the days of slaughter. If you are a traveler on those days, you do not have to do udhiyah. You won't have to slaughter. So, for instance, a person is visiting family, they have a break in the Eid break, for instance, and they've gone beyond the distance of being a musafir. So they are a musafir, they're a traveler. Their salahs will be shortened, different rulings apply. They also do not have to slaughter. They also do not have to perform the salatul Eid. If they should, if they can, but they don't have to because they're a traveler. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes things easy for people who are traveling. So you have to be a resident, you have to be living in that area. And there's more details regarding musafirin, but this is not the time to talk about that. And number 6, the main condition is they must be wealthy. I'm going to talk about this condition. Number 6 is important. So essentially, if you're a Muslim, you're an adult, and you have enough money, you have to do udhiyyah, as long as you're not traveling. Most of us are not traveling, as I see many of your faces every week. Alhamdulillah. So now, when does udhiyyah become compulsory? If you're alive on the Fajr on the day of Eid. If you witness Fajr time, you're alive, and Fajr time sets in, now Eid Salah becomes compulsory on you. The udhiyyah also becomes compulsory on you. That's the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, inshallah, Wednesday. Now, what does wealthy mean? In Islam, wealthy is different than what you and I think. Now we have a standard. Someone has to be, before it used to be a millionaire, now millionaires are looked down upon. You have to be a billionaire to be wealthy in today's time. That's not what wealthy means in Islam. It's much less. And that shows you we should be content as Muslims. We're all wealthy. I would believe so. So what does wealthy mean? If you look at your extra assets, now what do I mean by assets? It can be your clothing, it can be an extra house that you own, extra, ones that you are not using. If you have clothing that is more than what you would consider normal in your society, if you have an extra phone, if you have extra, some people collect shoes, you have all of these different things, extra stuff, gather all of that extra stuff, and if it equates 87 grams of gold or 612 grams of silver, that means you're wealthy. I'll break it down a little bit more. Why 87? These sound arbitrary. These are the amounts that you need for zakat. If a person has 87 grams of gold, they have to give zakat. If they have 612 grams of silver, they have to give zakat. So if you look at your extra assets, take all of your clothes. Let's say you have a huge wardrobe. How much is normal in our society? Let's say, 10 shirts, 10 pants, etc. So exclude that. That is your necessity. All your extra clothing, gather them and find out what the value of that is. All your extra gadgets, you have 2 computers, you don't need one of them. You have 2 phones, you don't need one of them. You have 2 cars, you don't need one of them. Take all of these extra assets that you have, extra assets, and if it goes higher than the amount of 87 grams of gold or 612 grams of silver, then you have to do udhiyyah. Now, I've tried to make it simple for you guys. I calculated how much that is. That's $440 when it comes to silver. So if your extra assets goes over $440, you have to do the udhiyyah. Okay. Now, most of the scholars, there's a difference of opinion here. If you guys attended the zakat seminar that we have, you will understand what is the silver standard or gold standard. Some scholars have said that no, we shouldn't rely on the silver standard anymore. You should go with the gold, because in today's time the silver has dropped really low. So I'll give you another opinion if that helps. But if you want to have taqwa, just say $440. And I think everyone just taking your extra shoes will have more than $440 worth. So you'd have to do the udhiyyah. But the gold standard is $5,000 and a little bit over $5,400. So now you choose what you want to follow. Some of the scholars in North America said that for zakat now, we can take the gold standard. Traditionally speaking, they would only allow you to take the silver standard. Now, what does this mean? I'll give you an example. You can take either 440 if you want to go the taqwa route, and if you have some constraints, then take the gold standard. Look at your assets. You have 2 phones. One phone is a necessity, so you don't count that phone. You have 2 phones. How much is that extra phone? You got a new iPhone 14, that's going to be pretty expensive. Look at your extra shoes. You only need one pair. You may say, no, but I need those. Jordan 3s are also necessary. 11s are also there. No, you need to just take one of those. You need to walk with those shoes. That's what they're for. The aesthetics is not a necessity. So you count extra shoes. Take one shoe, that's your necessity. Don't count that. All of your extra shoes, take that in. All of your extra clothes, everything extra that you have. What don't you count? The stuff that you use, meaning that you need for daily life. Your furniture at home, you don't have to count that. Your house that you're using, you don't count that. If you have an extra house, you have to count that whole house. If all of your extra assets added together is more than $440, which it most likely is, you have to do the udhiyyah. If you're taking the silver standard, if you want to take the gold standard, you can say, okay, $5,400, but I still think most of us would fall under, going above that. We would have to do the udhiyyah. So this is what it means to be wealthy. And if you are a Muslim adult and you have this much money, and if you have this much cash, absolutely. You have that much cash in the bank, you have like $6,000 in the bank, you have to do udhiyyah. And there's no option. It's wajib. Okay. So now let me mention some of the rulings of the udhiyyah. Which animals should we slaughter? As I mentioned earlier, you cannot slaughter an egg. You can't crack an egg on a pan and say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. It's not going to count. Nor a chicken. You have small animals and large animals. What are small animals? Goats, sheep, and of those type, right? So a ram, goat, sheep, those qualifications of animals. There's various species among them. So those are considered small animals. So sheep and goats. Large animals include cows and camels. Now, a type of cow could be an ox. There's various different species of camel as well. You have Bactrian and the dromedaries, and then you have different types of cows as well. But they all fit under cows and camels. So this means you cannot slaughter a deer. Someone catches a deer in their backyard, in Dunwoody there's plenty of deers. You cannot slaughter that deer. It's not going to be an animal that you can slaughter. You cannot slaughter a chicken. You cannot slaughter, what other things are people? You can't slaughter a horse. And some people do that in different areas. They eat horse meat. So this will not be allowed for the slaughter. So small animals, goats, sheep, etc. Large animals, cows, camels, those like. Now they have to meet an age requirements as well, and they differ. So small animals, sheep and goats, they have to be 1 year old or more, at least 1 year of age. The scholars also give concession if they're 6 months or older and they look like 1 year, then that's okay. A sheep is a big fat sheep and it looks like it's one years old. If it's more than 6 months, less than a year, then okay, you can go ahead. But typically speaking, it has to be older than 1 year for a small animal. For a cow, it must be 2 years or older. You cannot slaughter a calf. 2 years or older if it's a cow. And if it's a camel, 5 years or older. So you can't slaughter a newborn cow or a camel. Camels must be 5 years or older. Cows, 2 years or older. Now, what about what type of, what quality of animal? You should choose the best quality you can find. This is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you should choose the best quality animal as you can. However, if whatever animal you found, as long as it's not deficient visibly, it will be acceptable. What does that mean? If you bought a sheep and the whole ear is cut off, you cannot slaughter that sheep. If you bought a sheep and it's missing a leg, that's not adequate. If you bought a cow and it's blind, you cannot slaughter that cow. So it has to be visibly okay, a healthy animal. The better, the more the better. Now, regarding small animals, that counts as one udhiyyah. You cannot share a small animal. Small animal, goats or sheep, you can't have, 5 people joining in and slaughtering one sheep. It only counts for one person, a sheep or a goat. It's a small animal. As for large animals, cows, camels, ox, things of that nature, you can have 7 shares, up to 7. So if someone says, okay, I want to do a whole camel by myself, then alhamdulillah, it's going to be heavy on your scales. You can do that. If you have 3 people saying that, okay, I want to do a camel, you can do that as well. 5 people, okay. 6 people, okay. 7 people, that's the maximum. 8 people, you cannot have. If you have 8 people sharing in on a large animal, no one's is going to be accepted. You cannot have 8. The maximum is 7. Minimum is 1. Now, the uncle, he came up to me last week and said that, he would like to see some proof about, 7 shares in an animal. So I'll read some ahadith. If there are some other madahib where they differ, then, we welcome, alhamdulillah, all the madahib. I'm speaking on behalf of the popular madahib that I am aware of. And we have ahadith to back that up. It's not that we just practice on something that is unfounded. Imam Muslim, in Sahih Muslim, he narrates on the authority of Jabir bin Abdullah radiyallahu anhuma. He says, نحرنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عام الحديبية البدن عن 7 والبقرة عن 7. So Jabir radiyallahu anhu, he says, we slaughtered with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the year of Hudaybiyah a camel which equated for 7 shares and a cow which equated for 7 shares. So these are 7 shares each. In another narration, Jabir radiallahu anhu also says, حججنا مع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فنحرنا البعير عن 7 والبقر عن 7. We did Hajj with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So we slaughtered a camel and it equated 7 shares, and a cow would equal 7 shares. In another narration, al-baqaratu an 7 wal-jazur an 7. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, a baqara, which is a cow, it equates 7 shares. Jazur, which is a ba'ir, a camel, it equates 7 shares. There's plenty of ahadith in this regard. And of course, the Lajna Da'ima is a group of muftis. They have stated that a badana and a baqara, a camel and a cow, it will equal 7 shares. Right? So this is hopefully enough proof. If someone says that this is unfounded, we have plenty of ahadith that states that a large animal will equate 7, but it should not exceed beyond that. Now, just a few more masail, inshallah, and then I'll conclude. There's a little bit more. Everyone who meets those requirements has to do the slaughter. So easy requirements: you're Muslim, you are an adult, and you have the wealth necessary. Let's say $5,000. If you have that amount or extra assets which equate that amount, you have to do udhiyyah. If you're taking the maximum amount, $5,400, or if you want to take the taqwa route, $440. I would say go the taqwa route. If you have more than $440, you'd have to do the udhiyyah. Now the niyyah regarding the udhiyyah. Many of us are having other people slaughter on our behalf. So if someone is slaughtering on your behalf, they should let you know. If you are slaughtering on your spouse's behalf, let them know. They need to make an intention. So you need to let them know that, hey, I'm going to slaughter on your behalf. They say, okay, that's enough. You can slaughter on their behalf after that. So they need to, the one who is slaughtering needs to know who they're slaughtering on behalf of. Now, at the time of slaughter, you don't have to mention all the names. Some of us think we're very, a little bit OCD on this. So we have a list, you staple it on the cow, and then when you're about to slaughter the cow, you read the names and then slaughter. You don't have to do that. As long as you know which are the 7 individuals and you're slaughtering, that's okay. Also, this is probably not necessary for me to mention, but if one of the 7 people that are sharing a large animal, they decide that, you know what, I don't really care about udhiyyah. I'm not going to make the intention of slaughtering for Allah. I just want to eat that beef. It's really tasty. And he's joining in on that. His intention is he doesn't want to take part of the qurbani or the udhiyyah. He just wants a nice burger. That is going to cause everyone's slaughter to be cancelled. Right? So everyone needs to make the niyyah that I am pleasing Allah, then I'm going to get the meat. Right? I want the meat, but I also want to please Allah. That's a good intention. If you have the intention that I don't care about Eid or Udhiyyah, I just want the meat, no other intention, that's going to destroy the entire animal for everyone. Okay, it's also permissible what's called isalu thawab. If you have a large animal, remember a small animal, you cannot break them into portions. One animal is one portion. A large animal, you have 7 portions. Let's say you have 6 people, and you have one more portion of that large animal to make it 7, but you don't have someone to share with that large portion. You can make an intention that, I have my grandfather's passed away. I want to have the reward of this portion go to my grandfather who's passed away. You can make that niyyah as well. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once he slaughtered two animals. One was for himself, one was for those in his ummah who could not afford. So he slaughtered for everyone in his ummah who could not afford the slaughter. He did it on their behalf. So you can include more people. All of my family members who are Muslim, I'm intending the Isalu Thawab, they've passed away, this one portion to give reward to them. That's permissible according to that hadith. Now again, I'm going to finish inshallah. Gone a little bit over time. What are the days of slaughter? The majority of scholars say 10th, 11th, and 12th. If on the 13th you still have not slaughtered, you cannot do so. You have to give sadaqah. The amount of an animal, how much it costs, you have to give that in charity. You can't slaughter now. And there is no qada of slaughter. You have to do it that time. If you miss it, you have to give in charity the amount of that animal. According to Imam al-Shafi'i, you can include the 13th day as well. So 10, 11, 12, 13 of Dhul Hijjah. Okay, now finally, what to do with the meat? It's ideal to split all of the meat that you get into 3 portions. 1 portion for charity, give to the poor in your area, and preferably in your area. We want to help our own areas. This is what Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wanted. I know a lot of us, there's people who are needy back home. That's great, and it's good to give to them, but it's also good to care about our own communities. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent Mu'adh radiallahu anhu to Yemen, he said, take money from the rich there and spend it on the poor there. Don't give it back to Medina. Spend it on the people there. So it's ideal to spend in your own locality. Right? So first of all, it's preferable that we all do udhiyyah actually here. If not possible, that's understandable. It's okay. So what to do with the meat? 1 portion, we'll split it into 3 portions. 1 portion for charity, 1 portion for friends and family, or people you want to give as gifts, and 1 portion for your personal needs. You can utilize it, you can eat it. Now, in some cases, I find myself in part of this as well. We get really hungry and we want all of the meat for ourselves because it's extremely tasty. Is that permissible to keep all of it for yourself? Yes. If you're going to eat all of it, then keep all of it. It's fine. It's better to give in charity. It's better to share. But if you want to, freeze it and eat it throughout the year, you can do that as well. The main thing is you do not sell any portion of it. Even the skin of the animal, you cannot sell it. It's ideal to give it as a gift. No portion of that animal should be sold. And the last masala, inshallah, is the takbir al-tashriq, because I won't get to talk to you anytime soon regarding that. When we say the takbir after the salahs, I know many of you are waiting for that. What is the takbir? It's Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. That starts on the Fajr on the 9th. So the 9th is the day before Eid, so Tuesday inshallah, Yawm Arafah. So Fajr from that day, and it lasts for 23 salahs. What does that mean? Starts on the Fajr of the 9th. So after every salah, you have to say this takbir. And it finishes on the Asr of the 13th. So Eid is on the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 3 full days after Eid. The Asr on the last day, that's when you stop. You don't do it on Maghrib on the 13th. Right? So from beginning Fajr of the 9th, finishing to the Asr of the 13th, these are 23 salahs. After every salah, you say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Whether you are in jama'ah, whether you're alone, the men are recommended to say it aloud with a loud voice. The women are recommended to say it with a low voice. And this is to celebrate Eid and to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mah that He has given us. So these are a few masail, inshallah, that I wanted to share with you today. Jazakumullahu khairan for your patience. And we're going to finish here. Wa sallallahu tabaraka wa ta'ala ala khiri khalqi Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.